Alright, so it's take 2 of this video. I actually recorded it yesterday, but I didn't record my audio. Here's a little taste. A few days ago, I went on the channel. Yeah, it sounded horrible. So today we're doing take 2. My favorite player from every single Major League Baseball team of all time. You guys loved the first video I did of it. You loved me going through my favorite player from every team that's currently on the roster. I told you if we hit a certain amount of likes, we do it for all time, and boom, we destroyed the like button, so we're doing it for the favorites of all time. Now, I'm gonna give a little disclaimer here because I'm not gonna be picking anybody like Babe Ruth, Willie Mays, all these older players. I didn't ever see them play. For me, my favorite players gotta be guys that I saw play on the field. Keep that in mind when you're in the comment section because I can see you typing in there already. How did you not put Hank Aaron? How did you not put Willie Mays? I'm 24 years old. I was born in 96. I didn't see those guys play. So, as always, if you guys do enjoy this video, you like this kind of content, make sure to leave a like. That's the best way to show your support on the channel. Subscribe if you are new and you enjoy the content. Even though there's no baseball going on right now, we're still talking about it over here, so click that sub button. Remember to get in the comment section down below. Tell me your favorite player from every team all time, or you can just tell me if I made some crazy picks. And last but not least, make sure you guys are following me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, all that good stuff. I don't think I'm going to throw them all on the screen, but links are in the description, GiraffeNeckMarc everywhere. And let's start talking about my favorite players. So the team getting it started in today's video is going to be the Detroit Tigers. Now, they've had a lot of great players throughout their time while I've been alive, but I think the clear and obvious choice for me is going to have to be Miguel Cabrera, the one, the only Miggy. You can't call anyone else Miggy. Yeah, I'm looking at you. That's right, Yankee fan. Miguel Cabrera is the only Miggy. One of the best pure hitters that I've seen throughout my lifetime play the game of baseball. The dude won the Triple Crown a few years ago. He hits home runs, hits for average, hits doubles, gets on base. Not much of a fielder. I mean, he's a little bit less agile than he once was, and he wasn't ever particularly agile, but he used to play a little third base, even started off as an outfielder for the Marlins. He is easily one of the best players that I've ever got to see play during my lifetime. Guaranteed Hall of Famer, absolute stud. Love some Miguel Cabrera. For the Philadelphia Phillies, I had a really hard time figuring out who I was going to put here because I don't like the Phillies a lot, but then I remembered Roy Halladay. Unfortunately, lost his life in a tragic plane crash, but remember him as the player that he was. Yes, maybe more of a Blue Jay, but on the Phillies, he was also equally as good. He had some fantastic years. He was a pain in my butt being a Mets fan because he was so dominant, played the game the right way, played it like an old school kind of player, which I like old school, I like new school. For a pitcher, Roy Halladay, he just came out there and he shoved, and you got to appreciate that, even if he played for a team that I absolutely hate. Then we've got the Boston Red Sox to go completely 180. My favorite player for that team is going to be Manny Ramirez. Talk about polar opposite from Roy Halladay. A guy who was on the field, goofing around, having a good time, a bit of a clown. But that's what I loved about Manny Ramirez, because he could go out there, he could have a good time, and he'd still hit 40 homers, driving 120 RBIs, have an OPS above 900. He was an unbelievable, phenomenal player. He was a little bit ahead of his time because if he was playing right now, he truly would have been a megastar in the sport. So marketable, such a funny guy, such a goofball. That's the kind of guy you like want to see play right now. Whereas then he was a little bit early. Some people thought that he was a joke. He wasn't taking the game seriously. It's like, no, the guy still hits at an elite level. He can do whatever he wants, let him be. Manny's just being Manny, and that's why he's my favorite Red Sox player. Los Angeles Dodgers up next, and I had a tough time picking them because a lot of the teams when I was younger weren't great, but I ended up making the choice of Clayton Kershaw as being my favorite player from that team. Now, it's not necessarily that I like Clayton Kershaw. In fact, I'm not a huge Clayton Kershaw fan, but I respect the career he has had and what kind of pitcher he has been for Major League Baseball. He's probably going to be one of the best left-handed starting pitchers of all time in the sport. You've got to appreciate the greatness that this guy has. Now, in the playoffs, it's a different story. He disappears. He becomes a completely different pitcher. But during the regular season, I mean, he had like an 8 or 9 year stretch where he was like unhittable. There's not a lot of guys you can compare that to throughout the history of baseball. Clayton Kershaw's in a league of his own. He's my favorite Dodgers player. Pittsburgh Pirates, the easy pick for me is Andrew McCutchen. It pains me that he's on the Phillies because I gotta root against him now, and I really like the guy because on the Pirates, he was a lot of fun. He brought the Pittsburgh Pirates like sort of back to relevancy because pretty much throughout my entire life, they've been a bottom dweller in the division. But Andrew McCutchen brought some life back to Pittsburgh, brought them back to the playoffs, was an exciting player, won an MVP, could do it by running, throwing, hitting, power. He was a complete package, and he was a really fun player to watch. Another really fun player to watch that we're going to talk about for the Washington Nationals / Expos because, of course, Vlad Guerrero. I mean, he didn't play for the Nationals. He's an Expo, but he falls for this team. The reason I put / Expos is because I wanted to include Vlad Guerrero. I loved watching this guy play, and obviously he wasn't a National, but I remember as a kid, like, playing backyard baseball, one Vladimir Guerrero. That's like how he said his name in the game. My mom will even tell you about Vladimir Guerrero. That's probably one of the players she will always mention whenever talking about baseball. She'll say Vlad Guerrero, just because I talked about him so much as a kid. He was such a good player on the Expos, on the Angels, whatever team he was on. Hit bombs, was a really like weird player because he'd swing at every pitch, but didn't matter because he didn't strike out that much and he was a beast. Vlad Guerrero, favorite National / Expos player. Going to the south side of Chicago this time for the Chicago White Sox, and I'm going with the big hurt Frank Thomas. Frank Thomas, what a massive human being. And for me, I mean, I know I'm probably very similar in stature to Frank Thomas from what you guys can tell, but you'd be wrong. I'm a very small guy. And to see a guy like Frank Thomas, who had such huge size, hit baseballs so hard, I mean, they call him the big hurt for a reason. He puts a big hurt on the baseballs. It was just really, really cool to watch as a kid. Never the coolest player, never the most exciting, but just a absolutely massive human being who stepped up to the plate and mashed. Sign me up for that. I love the long ball. Now, for my favorite team, the New York Mets. If you've been an OG of this channel, you know where I'm going. It's Mike Piazza. It's very simple. He's been my favorite player ever since I can remember having a favorite player. Like, oh, who's your favorite player? Mike Piazza. So much so that I think I dressed up as him for Halloween for like 3 or 4 straight years when I was a kid. I want to say like from kindergarten to 3rd grade. But he's the reason I wanted to become a catcher. He's the reason I wore number 31. He's probably the reason why I stayed a Mets fan. He's probably one of the reasons why I love the game of baseball so much. Like, just growing up as a Mets fan, he was the guy, and I was all in. Big Mike Piazza fan. Easily my favorite player of all time. Need to somehow get him in a video. So Mike Piazza, if you're watching, you know where to find me. Hit me up. St. Louis Cardinals. Now, they have one player in particular that's going to be my favorite, and that's going to be Mark McGwire. Not only just because we share the same name, even though he spells it incorrectly by throwing that awful letter K at the end of it, but another one of these guys growing up 5, 6 years old, he was hitting 60 plus homers a year. Him, Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa having that legendary home run chase. The dude just absolutely mashed. Now, yes, was he a steroid user? Yes. Did he lie? Yeah. But that's the era that I grew up falling in love with the sport, and I can't really talk about like baseball in the 2000s growing up as a kid without mentioning the name Mark McGwire. He's got to be my choice for the Cardinals. Big Mac was bigger than life. For the Kansas City Royals, pretty much my entire life they've been a terrible team, except in 2015 when they beat the New York Mets in the World Series. Go figure. So they haven't had a lot of great players, but I think the guy that makes the most sense as my favorite player from that team is going to be Carlos Beltran. A little bit probably because he did play for the Mets and he was so great for us, and even though in 2006 happened, I'm still a huge fan of his. Yes, he cheated with the Astros, but that wasn't happening during the beginning of his career for what we hope. But Beltran was a great player with the Royals. He ended up going to the Astros. The Mets continued on that great career. The Royals was really like the starting ground for him. You didn't probably hear much about him because that wasn't a great team, but he still put up some great numbers. Talented player, 5-tool athlete. Still think he's a Hall of Famer in my eyes. The writers will decide that in a few years. The north side of Chicago now. The Chicago Cubs. Sammy Sosa. Everybody, I mean everybody, had to emulate Sammy Sosa's home run shot after you hit a home run in a wiffle ball. The little hop. The little hop. It was incredible. Not only that, he hit bombs. After 9/11, he like ran out to the outfield with American flag, hit a home run, ran with the American flag around the bases. Gotta love a guy that loves America, especially when he's not from this country. He was a great player. Did he take steroids? 100%. Did he cork his bat? Yes. So he cheated a bit, but he was super exciting. And again, another one of these guys who I have to mention when I talk about my life as a baseball fan. He was just such a big part of it. Sammy Sosa. For the Arizona Diamondbacks, there's only one player that came to mind as soon as I saw this team, and it was the big unit, Randy Johnson. Big Randy Johnson fan. So much so that in the video talking about my all-time lineup, my dream team, I put Randy Johnson as my starting pitcher, which surprised a few people. When I think of like intimidating, domination, nasty, Randy Johnson is always the first guy in my mind. What was he, like 6'10"? Threw heat, left-handed, nasty stuff, no hitter, perfect game, whatever you want, he could do it. He's just the man. Randy Johnson was incredible. Colorado Rockies, I'm gonna go with a current player, and that's gonna be Nolan Arenado. Throughout the time that I've been able to watch the Rockies, he's really the guy that I've liked the most on their rosters. They've had some great players like Todd Helton, Larry Walker, but Nolan Arenado really feels like the first player of like my generation. Absolute stud with the bat. Yeah, someone's gonna say the Coors effect. I can already read in the comment section. I understand the Coors effect's a real thing, but he still hits like 800 OPS on the road. Combine that with one of the best gloves in the league, an absolute cannon of an arm. Dude's an electric factory. You gotta love Nolan Arenado. Milwaukee Brewers, Prince Fielder. Easy choice. Super fat dude, pudgy, stocky, dropping bombs. Sweet left-handed swing. I loved his little toe tap at the start of his career. Big Prince Fielder fan. He had a lot of fun on the field as well. I love guys that look like they're enjoying the game, and Prince Fielder was definitely one of them. I remember him and Ryan Braun's like home run celebration with the knocking each other out, the punches. It was great. Unfortunately, his career ended short due to injury, which is terrible because he would still be playing to this day and probably still be pretty good. So we miss Prince Fielder out in Major League Baseball right now. Definitely my favorite player from the Brewers. So for the Cleveland Indians, I've got a weird pick. It's not necessarily a player that's good. It's gonna be Fausto Carmona, or I guess I should say Roberto Hernandez. Yes, Fausto Carmona is my pick for the Indians. I don't know why, but every time I think of the Cleveland Indians from like the mid-2000s when they were good, I think of Fausto Carmona, not CC. Fausto Carmona. What's wrong with me? He only had like 1 or 2 good seasons, and even then, marginally good. I think I really like the whole idea of one, great name, even though that's not his real name, because yes, Fausto Carmona took on a fake identity so that I think he could be younger in Major League Baseball and get paid more, obviously, but he took on a fake name. His real name's Roberto Hernandez. That came out at some point during his career. Well, yeah, Fausto Carmona, just a name that sticks with me. Gotta pick him for the Indians. For the Seattle Mariners, I'm going Ichiro. Ichiro was such a cool player when I was growing up. His rookie season, he comes from Japan, he wins the AL MVP. That just doesn't happen very often. And for me, a small guy who didn't hit a lot of home runs, this is a guy who I could sort of look up to as a player that I hope to strive to be. Wasn't a huge dude, but he played the game at such a high level, slapping the ball all over the place, hitting for high average, great glove in the outfield, great arm, fast on the base paths. And apparently, if he wanted to, he could have hit 40 home runs a year. He was just like, I want to hit 360 instead. Just an absolute legend, and he was cool. There was no good Japanese players like that ever before. Even if he did deny me a selfie at at Mariners spring training. I don't care, he's the GOAT. The Miami Marlins, or I should really call them the Florida Marlins, because for this next player, he didn't play for Miami, he played for Florida. That's gonna be the D-Train, Dontrelle Willis. Now, just like with Sammy Sosa, Dontrelle Willis had to be a guy that you mimicked in wiffle ball. The big leg kick, the herky-jerky motion. He had some absolutely fantastic years with the Marlins in the 2000s. He was a part of some of those great Marlins teams. He was a fun player, another one of these guys. He was a pitcher who could rake. Everybody loves a pitcher who could hit. And he also earned some extra points for me when he stole my line. Yes, Dontrelle Willis used the fine wine line on TV. I'm gonna insert a clip here.
He's like a fine wine, getting better by age.
I tweeted about it and Dontrelle even liked it. So Dontrelle knows, he's a viewer. Dontrelle, if you're watching, hit me up on Twitter. Let's figure something out. Heading north of the border, we got the Toronto Blue Jays, and my favorite player all time from that team is going to be Carlos Delgado. Now, of course, Delgado definitely has some Mets ties. He had some great seasons with the New York Mets, but his prime, his best years, that's with the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't understand how this guy isn't in the Hall of Fame. His numbers are silly good. I think he had like a 10 or 12 year stretch where he was averaging like 30 plus homers, 30 plus doubles, 120 RBIs, like 950 OPS. He was on another level. The fact that he didn't even receive 5% of the votes to stay on the ballot for the Hall of Fame is absolutely disgusting. The writers did a terrible job. You can see why I don't like baseball writers. Carlos Delgado shouldn't still be on the Hall of Fame ballot. He should be in the Hall of Fame. Dude is one of the best first basemen of the 2000s. For the Atlanta Braves, I got another first baseman. I'm gonna go with Andres Galarraga. Now, Galarraga played with a bunch of different teams, but I always remember him with the Braves, and I remember him being an absolute beast. As a Mets fan, I grew up hating the Braves. I still do. They were so dominant. I had to deal with the Yankees in the American League and the Braves in the National League. Obviously, you had Chipper Jones and Andrew Jones, but I just remember watching Andres Galarraga and not hating him. Just being like, oh, he's so good. And when he hit these home runs, they'd go like 600 feet. Plus, Galarraga, great last name, Andres Galarraga. He also scared me a little bit. I don't know. He gives me like Bowser feeling. But yeah, he's my favorite player from the Braves. For the Los Angeles Angels, we're gonna keep it simple. Mike Trout probably will go down as one of the best players, if not the best player of all time. Get to see him from the start of his career all the way to the end of his career. He's from New Jersey, even if it is South Jersey, which doesn't really count. But I'll proudly claim to be from the same state as Mike Trout because he really is just such a good player, such a good dude. How can you not like Mike Trout? For the Texas Rangers, I'm gonna go with Adrian Beltre as my favorite player all time. We miss Adrian Beltre in Major League Baseball. The dude was such a good player, so underrated, and he was a bundle of joy. Him and Elvis Andrus screwing around at shortstop and third base. That is great video. I loved watching it. You couldn't touch his head when he came in after hitting a home run or scoring a run. He'd freak out. And then he'd go up to the plate and he'd mash. He'd hit broken bat home runs. He'd hit home runs from one knee. Then he'd go out and play third base, play great defense, cannon of an arm. Adrian Beltre is definitely my favorite Ranger of all time. Now, the evil empire, the New York Yankees. Derek Jeter. I feel like that's really the only choice I can go with. Yeah, there's some former Mets that end up playing for the Yankees, but I feel like Derek Jeter's really got to be my favorite Yankee of all time. After a player, don't like him. He's done some crazy things as the Marlins. But while he was on the Yankees, as much as I hated that team, I respected the hell out of Derek Jeter. I read his book. I know his entire story. Yes, he was an overrated player in the history of baseball, but he really is, at least for me growing up, one of the greats that I got to see play. That's what I was hoping David Wright would turn into one day, like the next Derek Jeter. For the Oakland A's, I'm going with a bit of a meme pick, Jason Giambi. Now, you're probably wondering, why is Jason Giambi a meme? Well, one, he did wear the golden thong, which is just terrifying to think about. That's nightmare fuel. But also for the Mike Francesa Jason Giambi meme. For those of you who don't know who Mike Francesa is, he is a New York sports radio host, but he's got his own show now, and people love to prank him because he just gets so visibly mad and pretends like he isn't. So he'll be talking about who could be the new manager of the Mets or the Yankees. And someone will call in and say, hey, Mike, what do you think about Jason Giambi being the new manager? I'll put some clips to it right now so that you know what I'm talking about.
Chris and Baldwin, what's up, Chris?
Hey, Big Mike, Happy New Year.
What's happening?
I got a question for you. This report, Jay Glazer was saying a couple of weeks ago that Odell Beckham Yeah, well, he was coming out with the report that Odell Beckham could get traded for Jason Giambi. I heard the guy.
There's a guy who waits on the line for an hour and a half to say Jason Giambi's name. I mean, what a fool. I mean, Jim in Maine, what's up, Jim?
I won't top that one.
An hour and a half to stay online. You know, listen, that's there. It's not bothering me. I just hang up. I go right to the next guy. I mean, go ahead. What's up, Jim?
So yeah, Jason Giambi, my favorite player on the A's. For the Cincinnati Reds, we got Ken Griffey Jr. I'm sure you thought I was going with him for the Mariners, but we snuck him in here with the Cincinnati Reds. Ken Griffey Jr., another one of these guys who is one of the greatest players of all time, and that's with missing so much time due to injury. Imagine his numbers if he didn't miss like 3 full seasons due to injury. He would have been up there with Barry Bonds as some of the best all-time numbers ever. Great guy, great ambassador for the game of baseball. I'll always remember him rocking the backwards hat in the home run derby. That's like an image that's ingrained into my memory. How could you not like the kid? Ken Griffey Jr. is such a beast. San Diego Padres, Jabari Blash. For those of you who have been around the channel for a long time, you know why I'm a big fan of Jabari Blash. Started off as a meme, playing MLB The Show. He eventually got traded to the Yankees, made a big video about it. He reached out to me, hit me up, was like, yo, that video was great. Ended up meeting him, doing an interview, going out to dinner with him. We've become friends now. Like, we talk pretty regularly. Jabari Blash will always be my favorite player from the Padres. He's out in Japan now if you're wondering about where he's at. Staying in the National League West, next up is the San Francisco Giants, and my favorite player from that team all time is going to be the greatest player of all time, Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds is the greatest player of all time. I don't care about steroids, it doesn't matter. I've mentioned a couple times, talking about the history of baseball. You want to mention the 2000s era, Barry Bonds. That's the guy. If I'm not a fan of Mike Piazza as my favorite guy, Barry Bonds would probably be my next best choice. Every single day, waking up in the morning, seeing SportsCenter, seeing Barry Bonds hit another home run, just do things that other players weren't doing. He truly was like almost like this magical, mythical being. 762 homers, hit 73 homers in one season. For his career, he almost got on base more than he got out. That doesn't happen. That's not a thing. For the Tampa Bay Rays, I'm gonna go with Evan Longoria. They've had a lot of weird players throughout their history, but I think Evan Longoria is like the right pick for me. Gotta be the best player in the history of their team, you know, at least statistic-wise with their team. I know they had like Wade Boggs and Fred McGriff play, but Evan Longoria, for their actual team performance, he's gotta be their best all time. I was actually a really big fan of him. Really good player, great third baseman, swung the bat well, but he just played the game the right way. Really good guy to look up to as a player. But on the Rays, Longoria is my guy. Houston Astros, I would have picked like Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, George Springer, but those guys kind of let me down. So we're gonna go back in the day to the Astros in the 2000s era. We're gonna talk about El Caballo Carlos Lee. Big Carlos Lee fan, so much so that when I was going through this list with my dad, I mentioned the Houston Astros and I said Carlos Lee. He's like, you love that guy. You were a big fan. Don't know why. Maybe it's because he was like a short and stocky guy, and I mean, he did mash. He was a good player, and the nickname El Caballo is fantastic. But I was a really big fan of Carlos Lee, like always on my fantasy baseball teams, always a guy I drafted in MLB The Show or 2K. Just a huge fan of Carlos Lee. Second to last team here, we got the Baltimore Orioles, and as much as I wanted to pick Cal Ripken Jr., I never really got to see him at his prime, so I ended up going with Manny Machado, who a lot of people don't like. He's pretty polarizing, but for me, I always respected the game that he had. He was dirty in the field and in the field as well. Did some dirty plays too. Might have ended Dustin Pedroia's career, but he's definitely talented, like a nasty third baseman, can't have an arm. At least with the Orioles, he was great. Was a really good player, and I kind of like that he embraces the villain a little bit. It's a little different than what you see in baseball a lot of the times. I'm okay with it. And then last but not least, we got the Minnesota Twins. I wanted to put Christian Guzman because that name always comes to my head for a guy who wasn't ever particularly great. I just remember John Miller specifically saying Christian Guzman. That sticks with me, but obviously I'm going with Johan. So I definitely have some connection to Johan because of the whole New York Mets thing. But even when he was on the Twins, I was a huge fan of Johan as a kid. Like, he was so good. He was a little bit Kershaw-like before Kershaw even came around. Just a dominant left-handed pitcher, won multiple Cy Youngs in the American League. He was one of the best pitchers of the 2000s decade. Everyone just forgets a little bit because his career ended so early because of all these arm issues. Johan's always got a special place for me. Favorite player from the Twins. So those are my favorite players from every team in Major League Baseball throughout the history of my life, all time, whatever you want to call it. I'd love to know what you guys think about it down in the comments below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Who's your favorite players? I'd love to see what you got. Remember to leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it, as well as click that subscribe button if you have not yet done so. Make sure you click it. Remember to follow me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, all that stuff. Links in the description. And I'm going to wrap up the video there. You guys know the drill from here on out. YouTube recommends you watch this one right here, as well as this is my most recent upload. So if you haven't seen any of those, click through those, give them a view. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you all tomorrow for another video. Bye.